better mute this. Okay, there we go. Let's see if it starts up. There we go. Okay, make sure the audio is on. Yep. Okay, we're good on that. All right. So, hello, everybody. If anybody pops in, this is Carl Killow and my good new friend Gabriel. We have had some pretty fantastic talks over the past couple of weeks here, and decided that we'd share this one online. This is Leaving Leviticus. I named it so because I came from a very militantly atheistic background, and one thing that I noticed was that Leviticus is one of those sections of the Bible that tends to get picked on very, very frequently. And what I found now that as I've gone through, what would you say, gone through the Bible more now, I've been able to realize that most of the time when you see something weird in there, you just don't quite understand it yet, or there's an extra meaning in there that you're missing out on, something like that. So. So today I thought I'd talk a little bit about Exodus, because the Exodus story seems to be very, very much multi-layered and very true on many different levels. It's true for, it seems like, well, it's true on, okay, this is how you should act in the world. So God's giving some commandments out, and here you go, Moses. But that's the simple, really surface view. And then the next view seems to me to be something like, okay, here's how corrupt and overbearing tyrannical nations tend to fall or go through a cycle of weakening, and then they spit out a new people, something like that. And then I think there's the psychological aspect of it. So this is, imagine Moses being, well, you being Moses, and what happens to Moses, and or you could look at it this way: imagine Moses is a new personality struggling to come out of the recesses of your mind and to express himself, and your current ego, your tyrannical ego, is Pharaoh, and is suppressing that new idea because it doesn't mesh up with how you behave and your current worldview and things like that. And this I experienced directly myself when I was ignoring some things about what I wanted to do with my life, and trying to drown the voice of God with alcohol. That doesn't work very well. And well, I'll go over it a little bit, but first I'd like to let Gabe talk on just general thoughts on Exodus. Do you get any special meaning out of the story?
Yeah, that's a good question. At the moment, I'm unsure. I think I get a lot of meaning out of different parts of the story, but as an overall narrative, I don't think I could just give you like a straight up, like, this is what it is, this is what it means. Although sure. I do suspect that is there. You know, I suspect that Peterson, for instance, would have something to say, nice and concise. This is, you know, what it represents psychologically. At the moment, I've looked more at Genesis, partly because that's what the Peterson biblical lectures have already been about so far.
Right.
But having said that, you know, I read through the Bible because since I have a Jewish wife, we do this thing, which is the Parsha, which is every week you read a section of the Torah, of the first 5 books of the Bible. So I've done that for at least a couple of years now. So I've actually sort of gone through in very fine, you know, detail the Bible, and so I always see things, I always pick up things which I think are brilliant. So yeah. My general thought would be it's similar to the rest of the Bible that I've read, which is that there's a lot of hidden gems. But yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't give you just the meaning of Exodus at this point.
Well, yeah, and of course, a lot of the point of this show is, at least so as Chris and I have been tackling it so far, has been to well, articulate ideas, put them out there, and let iron sharpen iron. So there's and to try to speak them out in order to let the creative process work in both of our minds at the same time. So that's, and I like demonstrating that. Demonstrating that live on the net. I think it's a valuable thing for everybody. So guys, if you're watching this and you're not necessarily into the Bible or religion that much, realize that this is a conversation that will, if you latch onto someone that is open and honest with you and will give you feedback, and you trust each other, and you're not worried about, trying to impress the other person or one up them. If you're actually listening while the other person's talking and treating the other person like you are, like they're a person that has something that you could learn from, then you get that really valuable conversation style. So that's something else why I do these to, well, let other people see it. So because I think it's kind of rare these days, and when I find it, especially with someone like you, Gabriel, it's then I latch onto that person and then we end up having conversations for like hours on end, which is exactly what's happened to us so far. So I'm excited.
Yes. All right. Shall we jump in?
Yeah. Well, let's jump in. Well, first, before we get into Exodus, I'll tell you about a couple of things about that have happened recently, because another point of broadcasting has been to, well, I took this burden on myself in order to demonstrate the road of self-improvement, because I decided there was a lot of things wrong with my life. I didn't know exactly what was wrong yet, but I knew that I wanted to start fixing them. And so as I had been listening to Jordan Peterson more and more, and then I actually started to take some of these things to heart and live my life out through some of the advice that he had given, then it became, the path forward became much more clear, and I became much more confident. That led me to exploring churches and exploring religion and finding the ultimately the healing power of the faith that I now have, and I feel really fantastic. I've got more energy and more drive and will and purpose in life than I think I ever have before. So, well, with that as the preface, we were talking the other day about the Sabbath and actually having a day of rest and a day to stop and reflect and to look around you and to appreciate all the amazing things that are around you, and to not just work yourself to death, right? Because I think humans have a real tendency to do that. So this last Sunday was my first real Sabbath.
Right. Yeah.
Because I had never really felt like I had done like a week's worth of really hard work, and then, well, not necessarily hard work, but purposeful work, meaning-driven work, and then took a day to go, okay, well, I'm not going to really work today, although I cheated a little bit because I read the Bible and deciphered, but that's just what I do for fun. So now
I think that's allowed anyway.
Yeah, I think that's what you're supposed to do. And but I guess towards the end of the day, so I had I came back from church, and then I ate a meal, and then the church session had hit me. I explored a new church and met some new friends, and the church session hit me fairly deep. I think when we got into the point where the John, the pastor, had built his sermon up to the point where he was like, well, hey, if anybody needs to be saved here, come get baptized now. And I almost walked up there. I was like, I felt the calling at that point, right?
Yeah.
and it was really strong. And I decided, well, not yet, because I want to have a little time and alone time and peace, because I'm planning on going camping here in this next weekend and going on a retreat. And then I'm going to see how I feel after that. And then I'm going to go to church session, and then I may come back with a little water over my face. We'll see. Well, anyway, so the point of all that was, though, at the end of the day, and I had, I had abstained from a lot of things and done so in a very purposeful manner. and I hadn't drunk anything. Well, I hadn't had any alcohol in a while, and I decided, okay, I think I've done the good works. I don't feel the call of booze to dodge, to avoid. I'm going to do this as a reward to myself for the hard work and for the development that I've nurtured within myself. And I think that's a positive, very positive way to use a, food and tasty things and things that we get pleasure from, because the back and forth, well, the toxic part can be when you avoid the things that you should be doing and use the reward of the earth as a way to bury the things that you ought to be doing, like, so drinking too much or eating too much or etc. So I bought a small container of wine, not quite a bottle, and drank a little bit and relaxed. And alcohol had never felt like that before. Ever. I mean, it was like the most euphoric hit of alcohol I'd ever experienced ever. And I thought, man, if my life wasn't sorting out, that part of me could easily go back down into that hole again.
Right.
But since I had sort of that reverence, and I'm like, well, no, I kind of owe this to God. Well, I definitely owe this to God now that I'm healed and I can handle this, and I can have a Sunday now where I feel immense grace and joy. I have no concern over my becoming, of abusing drink anymore. And so, well, that was my revelation on the Sabbath, I guess. So.
Yeah. So it's like the sincere work, purposeful work makes rest that much more fulfilling, makes recreation that much more fulfilling.
Yes,
which is funny, because if you have like slack work or meaningless work or something, then it sounds like the recreation isn't that enjoyable either. So both aspects of your life are ruined. Yeah,
and I think my subconscious or God was always trying to tell me that, because I used to be very resentful of any time away from my toys. If I couldn't play video games, or if I couldn't stimulate myself with some sort of game, then I was usually not very happy, and I was just passing the time until I could get back to doing that. And so it would usually the times when I would get away from getting to play games would be if I was stuck on a road trip or something like that as a kid. And then I noticed, I was stuck on this road trip, but now I'm really happy I'm home. And this is the most fun I've had in quite some time. So yeah, you're right that the difference between the work and the reward makes the reward that much more sweet. Oh, so I just wanted to share that, because
sounds wonderful. Yeah, that sounds good.
Profound. Okay, so Exodus. So we have this story where you have a group of people, on the top level, you have a group of people that is within another group of people. So the Israelites are within Egypt, right? And so I was thinking about that on the levels that I'd said earlier, and the psychological one is the one that I have the toughest time walking through. But let me try and outline that, and then I'll let you go on that and see what you think. So we have the story of Moses being drawn out of the water. So you could look at that as the birth of a new young personality or a new possibility within a person. And he's drawn out of the water. So the water is always that chaotic potential. And he's drawn out by, sure enough, by Pharaoh's daughter. Well, if a new personality is being born and it's Pharaoh's daughter doing it, I'm not sure what to make of that. What would Pharaoh's daughter represent? Do you know off the top?
Well, as you're saying that, I just thought about, because if we think of Egypt as, let's say the Pharaoh and all that he represents as being tyranny, so that would be the hyper-ordered, hyper-masculine, the old senile king holding on to power that Peterson talks about.
Right.
Well, I think it's really interesting that it's his daughter. It's the feminine within that
Right.
that draws him out of the water. And I find that particularly interesting because the symbolism of the water is chaos is also feminine. So within that image, you have the negative, maybe not the negative, but you certainly have the ambivalent feminine, which is
I lost
chaos.
your audio.
Sorry, am I back? Am I back?
Not hearing your side, unfortunately.
Okay.
I think this happened on one other when we were chatting. You might have to pop in or pop out, or maybe click that mute button and mute and unmute it.
Yeah, I'll try that. Let's see. Okay, what about now? Can you hear me?
You're still. Yeah, why don't you jump out of the room real quick and come back in?
Right,
Yeah, no worries. It's all good. I can edit it out later. So, well, yeah, no, I thought that was while he's getting back in, that's kind of where I was going with this too. That there was a feminine aspect that would draw, be the part of the old tyrannical order that is drawing new potential out of chaos. So here comes Moses, and Moses is described as a goodly child, and he's described as the scene of the birth of Moses is he's born to two Levites, and the Levites are, I can hear you now. I can already hear your background noise. Yeah, you're good. Okay, so go ahead with so it's Pharaoh's daughter that draws it out, and it's the feminine that's doing it.
It's the feminine there, but it's feminine in the waters as well, which is the chaos of the waters, which she draws him out. Now, the chaos is kind of at least neutral, maybe negative. That's a sort of more negative symbolism. Feminine symbolism is chaos, the waters of chaos. Generally, you fear the waters, the great deep. However, you've got a positive feminine symbolism there in the daughter, right? The daughter is the compassionate one.
Right. So out of kindness, we're able to do this.
Absolutely. Out of compassion, she rescues out of maternal compassion as well, she rescues the child, even when it's pretty logically a bad idea for her to do that. It's against the laws of the kingdom. It's probably bad for her. She really risks everything to save a child. So that is pretty, positive feminine symbolism. So that really struck me because I think that Peterson talks a lot about the feminine as chaos, and not like it's not negative because positive things come out of chaos, but I think there's more to the feminine than that. And I also think that, there's something good about the maternal compassion. Obviously, it can run riot. And that's obviously what Peterson points out when he points to society being sort of dominated by it, or people trying to dominate society by it. But itself, in its own place, it's incredibly good. So that's cool. I like that. You've got the positive feminine at the start, taking out of the feminine waters of chaos this child, this individual. So yeah, all right.
Yeah. So and then we can work that on multiple levels, right? So it's the birth of new potential. So it could be the birth of, well, I think Peterson would do it as the potential of a new personality, maybe. And or we could look at it from maybe the level of the rise and fall of civilization and nations. If we looked at it from that view, then Moses would be the natural birth of a healer, of some kind of new, because it seems pretty obvious from the story, from my reading of the story, that there's some things about Egypt that are not quite right, that are crumbling, and obviously there's and the thing that's not right is the Israelites are all slaves. So you've got,
actually, I think it's even worse than that, because I think a little bit further back it might be in Genesis. This is after Joseph goes down to Egypt and settles there. It actually says, I wish I could remember the exact sort of chapter, but it actually says how the Pharaoh actually enslaved the whole population effectively, in the sense that he owns their land. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, yeah, that might have escaped my attention. This is why it's great to have the conversation. So it could be that the entirety of the population is enslaved to the tyrannical order, right? Not just the Israelites. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. I think it implies that I'll just go back a bit and see if I can find it. But I think it implies that you know, there used to be like farmers used to own their own land, and then due to like massive debt, the government effectively bought out everyone, and now that's how, you know, it's like a this is why it is story, and it's like this is why the pharaoh owns all the land in Egypt. So in that case, it's a socialist society, you could say.
Well, the libertarian in me and the anarcho-capitalist in me thanks you for that comment. But
okay.
All right, yeah. Okay, so there we've got that on the national level. So something needs to change, and then a hero comes out that can actually make the change happen as old structure is coming down. And then there's another level, but I'm not going to go there yet because it's really loose, and I'll think on it next.
All right.
It'll probably come as I read it. All of them usually end up popping in my mind. So all right, so Moses gets drawn out, and he gets drawn out by Pharaoh's daughter. So here we have the potential for a hero, and it could be a hero that it could be a new personality. A new personality for a person, or it could be the change of a change of a nation. So so I really love how the story works on these multiple levels, and I'm sure it's more than just those two. And of course, we have the path to faith part of it, which is true of all religious documents.
So sorry, can I just jump in there because I found the passage that I was referring to.
Oh yeah, go for it.
It's a bit more complex than I thought, because it's actually Joseph himself who buys the land off the people for the Pharaoh. So I don't know exactly what to make of that, but this is the verses. So this is Genesis 47, and I'm starting at verse 20. So Joseph bought, this is the ESV translation, by the way. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for all the Egyptians sold their fields because the famine was severe on them. The land became Pharaoh's. As for the people, he made servants of them from one end of Egypt to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had a fixed allowance from Pharaoh and lived on the allowance that Pharaoh gave them. Therefore, they did not sell their land. Yeah, so basically, that implies that the Pharaoh literally personally owns everyone's land. So yeah, it's like a weird kind of socialist thing. The complex thing about that, obviously, is that Joseph, who's otherwise a pretty sweet guy, he's the one who does it. So anyway, sorry.
As we go forward, definitely keep in mind. Oh, we're getting some echo there.
Oh dear, that's not great. Let me just rearrange my speakers, see if that helps.
Yeah, because I didn't hear any earlier.
All okay.
Right. Okay, I think that's good.
It's good?
Yeah,
all right.
All right, so yeah, as we go forward, please, because I think my gap is in between, like, right around where the stories of Jacob start, and then going into Exodus. I think I was just in a bad frame of mind as I was reading those over. They didn't sink in as well as I would like. So yeah, so help me out, fill those gaps in. That'd be great. Okay. So now we have this scene where so he gets drawn out of the water, and then Moses is kind of, he grows up, and he knows that he's an Israelite, and then he sees an Egyptian smashing on a Hebrew, right? And he looks around and is like, okay, there's nobody here, and he kills the Egyptian and buries him in the sand, and nobody saw him do it. Okay, and then the next day or later, the second day, it says, behold, two men of the Hebrews were fighting against each other. They strove together, and he said, hey, why are you good guys fighting against each other, right? Because if the Israelites are supposed to be the heroes of the story. And so, you good guys, why are you fighting? I mean, I can understand the Egyptians fighting against you. Why are you guys struggling against each other? And they turn and they look at him, and they're like, "Who are you to tell us not to fight?" And and then they say, "Are you going to kill one of us like you killed that Egyptian?" And then Moses was like, "How do they know?" and so yeah, so my initial thoughts on that were, if this was a psychological story, then you would have a fledgling idea that's finally growing up that has to shove something out of the mind space and start killing it. So maybe it would be an action that you used to take that you no longer take, something like that, or maybe a new habit that you're developing for yourself, and something else had to die in order for that that new part of you to manifest itself. And inside the mind, you can't hide anything from anybody. So if the Egyptian was like a bad habit or something that Moses was able to smite by being a goodly, I don't know, personality or something that's growing inside of a person, then the Egyptian would be, so yeah, a bad habit, and then Moses would be the new habit that replaces it. And then that would mean that the Hebrews that you're seeing and I'm using Hebrew and Israelite freely as equivalents here in this at this point. They would be maybe good things that are already happening within you, but maybe, it would be like two good options struggling between each other. And then Moses would be like, well, why are the good ideas? Why are the good pieces fighting with each other? And the good ideas will go, well, we're good. We're supposed to do this. We're supposed to have this dialogue. And so, because fighting and struggling in within the mind is two potentials to come about. So which action are you going to take, right? And you sort of struggle to figure out which one you're going to do. And then if you have a brand new idea, maybe that one's going to be a little bit confused, or especially if this is a new idea that has the potential to grow into a whole full self or ego or personality. And so you would be looking at yourself going, well, why are my good ideas fighting? And then they need to fight because, well, I strongly believe in this, that the whole point of consciousness and being able to speak is so that we can perceive the future more clearly without having to, and then pick a path forward without having to do the old biological game of whoever stabs each other the most and eats each other the most wins, right? So we can have our ideas fight instead of having our then instead of doing it with words instead of swords, right? So I think there's some of that going on there. Well, all right. So that was my ramble. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting because if that's the case, then how does Moses or the self or whatever the person know that the Egyptian / bad idea is not worthy of fighting? He doesn't let those two fight it out. He just intervenes and eliminates that that one idea. So,
and maybe he was learning a lesson here. Maybe that was wrong.
Right?
Killing the Egyptian was wrong.
Yeah. I think that it is more ambivalent. Like he seems guilty, right? Like when he gets called out,
right.
Yeah, he seems guilty, and then he flees, doesn't he? Or is that straight away? Or
yeah, and Moses feared and said, "Surely this is a known thing." And then he goes straight to how do you pronounce it? Midian. Yeah. So he runs away because he knows he's been sussed out. And so if he's running away, then wouldn't that be like the personality retreating into the subconscious to observe and to start pulling more information? Because, okay, well, I tried this thing and it turned out to be a disaster and I'm getting sussed out, and let's not try that anymore. And so that new archetype or that new personality would retreat and then so Moses fleeing to Midian would be his chance to draw more water, because that's what he does. He goes and he sees the seven daughters, and he helps them draw water, and the daughters help them, and so we get this idea of him growing up in a place where he's safe and invisible.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because we know the story, so we know that that's actually furthering his journey eventually, because it's out there that he's going to see the burning bush, he's going to marry there and so forth. But it seems he's also like fleeing from his responsibility in a way. He's actually fleeing from his problems, because he's got this ambiguous personality. Is he Egyptian? Is he Israelite? Should he defend the Israelites, or should he side with the Egyptians? It's like he's called on to do something there, but he actually evades that responsibility by just fleeing to another land where he doesn't have to be Israelite or Egyptian or anything. So it's like it's a bit of both. It's interesting, because I think that in a lot of ways, when we do avoid responsibility in our lives, we still learn a lot that can actually later be deployed even better when we do decide consciously to take on responsibility. Do you know what I mean? He probably learned a lot out there in Midian, which enabled him to be effective when he returned to Egypt. So from retrospect, you can say it was worthwhile, but in the moment, you can't say that it's a good option. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a very important piece to take away from this, is in that inside of, you can do something that, because how do you think he felt when he was running away? Right, he probably felt cowardly and ashamed, and is dealing with a lot of negative emotions, and wasn't and those negative emotions are coming about from the realization that he's not acting properly in the world.
Yeah.
And so he has to retreat.
He doesn't know who he is in the world. Like he doesn't know his identity. And he doesn't really want to try and find it, really. He just wants to be comfortable, perhaps. He just wants to have a nice, easy life, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so he spends his time out in Midian and drawing water, and that would be like he's building himself in some way, and improving himself.
I haven't read this one for a while. You say there's 7 daughters? What's
now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock.
Oh, that's wonderful, because look at the abundance of feminine symbolism. You don't just have 1 woman and some water, you have 7 women and some water.
Right. So the women, or the feminine, realizes, okay, this is important, right? And let's nurture this. He's not ready yet, but he still needs our help, and let's help him build. And then he ends up, so the story goes on, and so they help him, and Moses does a little helping as well. So, and when the shepherds came down and drove the women away from the well. So then Moses comes and says, "Go away, shepherds! Here, let the women draw their water." And then he does. Maybe that would be some sort of virtuous act that gains the trust of the feminine. The feminine responds by nurturing the potential virtue within him.
Yeah.
Okay, and then when they came to was it Reuel, their father, and he said, "Well, wow, how'd you get done so fast today? You're back soon." Because apparently this has been a thing that had been going on for a long time. There's been something in the way, some tyrannical thing that was in the way that was keeping the women from drawing the water and from creating new potential, right? And to do their proper job. And so they said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock." So in this line, Moses is doing the watering, and
I mean that's a little heroic exploit just in itself,
Right.
He goes, he drives away the shepherds, he waters the flock. I mean, that's brilliant. Perhaps that's his first heroic action, maybe. maybe killing the Egyptian was good. I'm not sure if it was, or it could have been bad, or it could have been a mixture of the two. But this action was clearly good.
This was definitely good, right? Yeah.
He acts as the hero, and he's rewarded for it.
Yeah, I think so. So he's discovering the potential of the heroic within himself, and then he gets rewarded for it. Yeah. And so then we go to another father who's going to be, in this case, Ruel looks like he's more of that wise, gentle father leader figure, right? That understands the world, and so let's see what he says. Sorry, I lost my place. Oh, and so Ruel said unto his daughters, "Oh, okay. So where is this man that helped you out? And why'd you leave him behind? Why is it that you've left the man? Call him that he may eat bread." And so he gains the attention of a wise and piece of order, or wise leader of order.
Yeah, like it sounds like it's a healthy masculine force, as opposed to the Pharaoh, who's a degenerated masculine.
Right. Yeah, and so the idea then would be that Pharaoh is got that iron grip, right? And he's not allowing for change, and that iron grip is making the people miserable and sick, and because they're living underneath a very stunted or stunting environment that prevents growth, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and so Moses gets called, and Moses was content to dwell with the man. So this was the father of the daughters, and Ruel gave Moses Zipporah, his daughter. And so the kind wise dictator says, "Okay, well, you get your own little piece of potential here in the form of a wife, right? And a wife that has come from a kind and benevolent leader, so that she would be maybe even more prepared, would you say? I'm not sure. I'm speculating at this point. Than just any random person or random expression of the feminine. This is a direct, really good joining of both sides in order for something new to be born. With the joining of the male and female here with Moses and Zipporah, now they're able to go forward and see what they can birth of their own venture together. Okay. And so they get together, they have a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a stranger in a strange land." So, well, I was rambling a bit there. Let me get your take on stranger in a strange land. What do you think off the top of your head?
Well, I'd have to see what comes next, but if this could be a turning point potentially, I don't know if the story sort of starts turning back towards him, maybe going back to Egypt at this point. But he seems to be. It's like the birth of a child reminds him that he's not where he ought to be, which is interesting. So, I don't know. It seems significant, but I don't know exactly what to make of it. Maybe it's like, here comes a new individual into the world full of potential. And that somehow reminds him of his individuality, of his potential, which he's not using as he should, perhaps. I'm not sure. But I don't know. Does the burning bush come very soon after this?
Very soon. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So now I think you've definitely latched on to the right idea. Let's kind of review what the story so far. So he kills an Egyptian, and that makes him flee from the old tyrant. And then he comes to a new place of safety where he is granted access to the ability to sculpt out of chaos through the feminine, and he gains a partner and a wife and now they are able to do things together, and they birth even more, and they have more into the world. So they have the son, and then they name the son specifically Gershom because I think it's saying that Moses had been a stranger in a strange land. So he's a stranger in a strange land because Moses definitely doesn't fit in Egypt. So he doesn't fit in the old order. It's a very weird place for him. And even though he's got a lot of potential for good in him, he's so different and so unusual that he stands out like a sore thumb, right? And the land itself is very unusual and strange because maybe what's so great about this place where it's so cold and calcified and unable to grow, and what kind of land is this? Because nothing really great can come out of such stagnation. Well,
he's like the ultimate stranger or the ultimate misfit because he's raised as an Egyptian, but he's an Israelite. So he doesn't truly fit in the Egyptian society or Israelite society. And there he is living in a land that he has no ancestral connection to. So he's just a total stranger, and he realizes it. But I guess the thing he has to do is find out who he is and what his purpose in life is, because it's like everyone has a purpose and everyone has an identity. So it's just that he's avoiding looking because it's so overwhelming. Because who is he? Like, he kills an Egyptian for his Israelite people, right? Maybe he has like a fit of like, I don't know, nationalism or something. I really am Israelite. I must defend my people. But then he tries to help his people by stopping them from just fighting amongst themselves, and they basically tell him to go away and implicitly threaten him. So he's like, oh man, I don't fit here either. No one wants me. And then he goes out to a foreign land. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
No, I like that. Yeah. No, thanks. No, I like the way you put it a lot. Yeah, that helped me a lot. Yeah, very good. Okay. So now we have this passage. So this is Exodus 2:23. So it's titled, God Hears the Israelites Cry. And it came to pass in process of time that the king of Egypt died. So something happened back in Egypt, and the old tyrant passes away, but a new tyrant comes and takes his place. And if you're familiar with the story, the new tyrant's even worse than the old one because of the things that he ends up doing. Okay, so the old tyrant dies, the old Pharaoh dies, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage. And so we've got this land where there's Egyptians and Israelites, and the Israelites are definitely enslaved, and they're crying out in pain, and their cry comes up to God by reason of bondage. So God is very sensitive to any one or nation or thought or personality that is being oppressed and enslaved, and he pays attention to that. So God hearing their groaning, and God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham and with Isaac and with Jacob. So now we're reestablishing the connection with the stories of Genesis. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them. So God sees the suffering, and God wants to do something about it. Now the very next step is Moses finding his way up to the burning bush. So God goes, something wrong here. Let me go look into the pool of the tools that God has. Even finds Moses, and he begins to instruct Moses, and then you have the whole scene for the burning bush.
Yeah, so that pretty much is the turning point. Then he has a son. He remembers his sort of alienation or strangerhood, and then boom, God, at the exact same moment, God remembers Israel. So, and then of course, the burning bush. I've actually got up the verses now, so I can sort of follow along. But cool, I like that.
Okay, and so and the next scene, we have the burning bush scene, and I'm not going to dig through that on this broadcast. You and I can talk about it at some point, or we may broadcast it in the future because I haven't really dug into it. But just in general, the whole that would be the idea that, so if this was something within you that was, if Moses is something within you that's trying to come out, something priestly because he's a Levite, or spiritual, something good because, well, it just says so right there. Mom, the feminine who actually births Moses, looks down at Moses and sees that he's a good child, and then protects him from the old tyrant for 3 months, I believe. And then so we know there's some good, there's some great potential here in Moses, and then as this potential just begins to develop and grow into maybe a full-fledged personality or a full hero, then it gets the attention of God, which you could, and I always have in the back of my mind that God is maybe your subconscious trying to order everything around, and all the potential that's inside of you that you are usually blind to, because the conscious part of our minds can't handle all the stuff that the right hemisphere seems to be very good at assimilating and just keeping inside of you, and then showing you what you need to see when you need to see it, right? And that's been very key for me as my ability to self-examine and my faith has grown, is to tap into that part which feels like God, which is your unconscious. So whether that's your actual stream from a divine being, I don't know, but it feels something like that, right? Well, anyways, so yeah, then the burning bush would be God going, okay, here's your chance for real. You're not going to just go out there and flail around wildly. Here's some instructions. Now you have this new potential, Moses, this new heroic, freeing, healing archetype that is trying to come out, trying to actually be birthed into the world, and God is taking care of Moses and giving him instructions, and God recognizes Moses as a potential tool that just needs maybe a little steering, something like that. And it's very obvious that Moses is not, without going through the passages themselves, that Moses is still fairly childlike and has not grown up completely, because Moses kind of whines back and he goes, "Oh, I don't talk so great, God, and and what am I going to do when this happens?" And he comes up with a bunch of whiny excuses.
Yeah, he's still trying to make excuses. He's still trying to avoid responsibility on some level. So yeah,
so we get all
God
that.
is at least his conscience. God is his own, at least his own inner awareness that he needs to be doing something. Something quite specific, but he resists.
And so, if we take the story up to this point as a nation building narrative, then there would be something, and I shared this with you, while I believe that there's something very natural about the way humans behave because of our ties to ancient biological things that are still very, dog eat dog and Darwinian and evolutionary based, where we have something in us that's has the potential to self-destruct, and that's why we see nations rise and fall, and why we don't get along, why we struggle and fight over power, right? And then if that's the case, then God would be our understanding, or the transcendent idea of what happens when people don't humble themselves to a grander idea or a grander transcendent reality. The buildings all start to come down naturally, all by themselves, as we try to as the pharaohs of the world, whether it's because pharaoh could be a representation not just of a dictatorial or a monarch or a despot. He could be like an entire system or an order that's no longer allowing for growth and is overly oppressing people, and then you have the widows and the orphans start to get, you know, to be a real problem, right? And then that, and people that aren't able to grow in the system. And that then in that case, then that desire to control and everything will naturally spin off people that are sick and tired of all the old oppression, and will be prepared to sacrifice their entire lives towards bringing about a new order. And if that requires the whole old structure to collapse, then they will go allow the structure to collapse and take the steps to let those things actually happen, so that this things start to crumble. And that's what I think the plagues are. The plagues are a description of how a nation or a people or a civilization begins to destroy itself when they get to the point where they're so consumed by the earthly and not humbled to God or to spirituality, or just something that spans beyond just me and my generations, right? Or next generation.
The interesting thing about the plagues is there's 10 of them, so it's actually quite a gradual process. It's not just absolute sudden destruction. It's like, here's something bad. Are you going to ignore this? Here's something else that's bad. Are you going to ignore this? Here's something else that's even worse. Are you going to ignore this? And it's only the last one that is like actual, you know, the death of the firstborn, the most terrible one, which you could see as the collapse of, you know, of everything. Actually, you could probably see the, you know, when they get swallowed by the waters of the Red Sea, that's probably the ultimate destruction, right? So even the death of the firstborn doesn't take everyone. So they have a long road to go, you know.
It's
quite funny too, because I know I'm jumping way ahead in the story, but Pharaoh lets the Israelites go after the death of the firstborn. So now they're free, now they're gone. But then he changes his mind, even after that, and pursues them. And that's why he ends up in the Red Sea, drowned, basically, because he pursues them. So it's like he can't let go. He can't accept defeat. He can't accept reality. He must have the final say and total control. And so since he just pursues that so relentlessly, he gets destroyed. He gets literally destroyed, drowned in chaos. You know?
Yeah. Perfect. It's just the symbolism is amazing, and it's right there when you have this. So yeah, if we use that filter going forward as we read Exodus, and that's kind of what I've been doing. Well, first of all, I had to be aware of what the filter really was, because I was having a hard time articulating it. But yes, I agree completely with what you said. Pharaoh can't let go, and he won't change. And then and what'll happen is as the plagues come, eventually a really bad plague will come, right? No, you're right, this hurts too much. And he lets go, and he says, all right, well, I'm going to let you have you can go act before God now. You can have the reins of control, and I'll let you go. And then his heart hardens, and he doesn't. And so he only repents and begins to okay, maybe that's okay, as the pain comes, as the entire nation is suffering. So that works on multiple levels. If it's the war within inside of you, and you have your old tyrannical personality, which is not allowing other ideas and things to express themselves within you, then then you're kind of suffering and hurting, and in my case, I was drinking too much, and I was doing things that would make me ignore the things that my inner Moses was coming up and going, hey, Carl, let my people go. And I'm like, nah, I got booze.
But when you're really okay, now I've learned it. Now I'm really going to stop this behavior. Now I'm going to learn. But then you have to wait like a few days, and then that's gone. So it's like Pharaoh doesn't learn. He cries out when things get too bad, but that doesn't matter. Everyone's going to do that because everyone's human. That's how they react. The key is whether you're going to learn from that when things are okay again. When God withdraws the plague, are you going to learn from your experience? Are you going to be sort of faithful to that experience that you went through, and Pharaoh isn't, you know. So
yeah. So I really like that works on again works on multiple levels, whether you're talking about an actual nation of people or you're talking about the war of personalities and psychology within the mind. And I'm sure there's multiple other levels, but those are the two most apparent to me as I've been digging through. Let's see, we've got Falarina in the chat, and she typed a couple things in here. So I just learned the new Hebrew word that is translated to remember actually means acting upon because the time is right. Which word was that? Was it? Well, she'll type it in here in a second. And then God told Abraham that the Hebrews would be oppressed in a foreign land for 400 years, and prophecy comes to realization during the time of Moses. Yeah, that's right. And so and it's interesting that it's 400 years because it's hard for me to get an idea of how long a generation might be back then. Because the idea in the Bible seems to be that there's a lot of old people around, people living for a very long time, right? I mean, Abraham starts at 70, which is crazy. And so maybe 400 years would actually just be 4 generations. So 4 generations of Israelites growing up in Egypt until they finally get to the point where things are so corrupt and stultified. And
it could be. There's an interesting pattern there. You've probably noticed it too. The ages get shorter as the Bible progresses until you basically get to Moses. Moses lives 120 years, and that becomes the kind of upper limit that any human being can live. At least that's the Jewish version, right?
Okay.
So there's a saying where you wish someone will live to the age of 120 because that's the utmost that a human being can live in the Jewish tradition. And to be fair, probably in reality, I don't know of anyone who's lived over 120. You know, I've heard of some people who have lived 115, something like that. But so yeah, it's sort of like that process of declining, ages of people that comes to like an end point. Sort of at that point in the Bible, yeah.
And I've noticed this too. Is I don't know. It's just it's more of a back of the mind kind of feeling. It feels like time progresses faster these days than it would in ancient times, and I don't mean like something that you could measure in an Einstein way. And I wish your friend Chris was here. Maybe he could give us some the hardcore physics on that. But but in a psychological perspective, or from the perspective of being a human that's trapped in this universe of potential and well, anyways, something about the old times seems slower than now, and things just take a very long time to progress, whereas now things seem to be we go through these iterations faster than we used to. So yeah, I like that you brought that up.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because I feel like that's like the parts of the Bible which have the longest ages, like the really longest ages, they are the most mythical. And then you get to the historical, which is sort of the narrative of the Exodus, where things have stabilized to basically look, apart from the big miracles, obviously, with the splitting of the Red Sea, but basically they look like they could have happened. It's historical. It's about numbers and dates and so on and so forth. Well, numbers and movements and places and things like that. You could have imagined it happening, but yeah, it's like there you enter real time. There you enter historical time. That's where it begins. Before then, I feel like the vast age spans. They're a clue. They're a hint that this part of the Bible is more mythical. If you think of Noah, you think of before Noah, so a few events after Noah. But especially before the flood, it's like this stuff is deeply archetypal, but it can't have happened. So it's like, I don't know, I feel like the age thing is a little bit of a built-in clue or a built-in hint in the Bible that this stuff is not to be read literally. It's to be read metaphorically.
Right.
that bit of a tangent, but we can get back to Exodus if you like.
Well, no, I think that's a good thought to have, is because it's something that I've always struggled with, especially because I you know, like most people, I think these days I'm very empirical, and I want to be shown the reason why I should believe, right? And so the thing that I struggled with for a very long time when I was, well, that's not true. Let me rephrase that. So for a very long time, because I was so insistent on empirical only, that there would be no way that I could get anything good out of the Bible, right? And then Dr. Peterson woke me up to, well, maybe just go explore, okay? And don't assume you have all the answers already, because that's the thing that always got me in trouble. And ironically enough, that was the thing that made me nervous of religion, because my idea of religion was that, okay, this is a bunch of fundamentalists who've latched on to, we have all the answers, which is not how I think you're supposed to approach Christianity. You're supposed to approach Christianity with, there's a lot of mysteries and wonders of wonders out here, and we don't understand, and you're small, and God's large, so worship him, and then maybe you'll get a few answers, and you can act properly in the world and get rewarded for that, instead of, okay, I've got all the answers, and being dogmatic, because it's the dogmatic part that's dogmatic bad, right?
I would say to say that's actively evil. It can have evil effect, obviously, the dogmatic attitude.
Yeah, lots of families with a dogmatic attitude. You're kind of breaking up there, unfortunately, Gabriel. I'm not sure if your internet connection just decided to choke a bit.
I might have jumped in again. I'll just see if it.
I think it's clearing up. Yeah, go.
Oh, that's good.
Say what you said for the last minute there.
I don't like dogmatism, basically. I don't think that God wants us to be dogmatic. And I don't think that's the Bible is more beautiful if you can see its symbolic dimension. But if you're taking it as just being literal, that blocks the symbolic dimension.
Yes.
So why would you want that? Why would God want that? You know, there's so much depth and richness in the Bible. Why would you want to read the creation story as a literal sequence of events when there's so much beautiful symbolism and deep insight packed into that?
Right.
And also, I just think we talked about this a little bit, I think, is through emails, but I think that the correct image of what God wants of people is the image of Jacob wrestling with God, or the angel, however you want to interpret that. Yeah. And that is to say that he actually wrestles. He doesn't just say, oh God, you must know everything. Please dictate word by word to me exactly what I should do and believe. No, he doesn't do that. He wrestles. He engages with his entire being, and that's why he's blessed. And he's blessed with the name of, he who wrestles with God. Right. And he's the father of the chosen people. So, I think that.
So, let's just state that real quick for the recording. So, if you didn't know, well, actually, this is a realization for me too, because I don't think I'd known it clearly. Israel means, is that what Israel means? He who wrestles, with God.
That's what the text says. Yeah, Israel, he who wrestles with God. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and so you've got this concept of, well, all right, the story of Jacob is he's kind of a scumbag in the beginning, right? And he does some tricky things, and he tricks his brother, and he allows his mother to manipulate him into tricking his brother to steal his older brother's birthright, and then you can fill in the gaps in the story here. So he gets. Then he goes out into the land, and he creates wealth for himself, and he tricks someone else, right? Yeah. And then takes all their stuff and then brings it back to as a way to make amends to Esau, his brother.
He actually does. He kind of does what Moses does. He goes into exile. He runs away. I mean, he's under more danger, to be fair. Like Esau has vowed to kill him, but he goes out and does what Moses does. He starts a family somewhere else. but then he has presumably he has a change of heart, and that's why and it's amazing. Like, it's an amazing story because he's going right back to meet up with and try and ask for the forgiveness of someone who's sworn to kill him. Like, he knows this. So that's because his mother told him. His mother said, Esau wants to kill you, you have to go away, and that's why he leaves. So he knows this. And he knows the wrong that he's done to him, but he's still willing to go and beg for forgiveness. So it's an amazing story. And yeah, the night comes. He's not far off from Esau. Some men have returned. They say Esau has so many hundred men with him, like armed men with him, and his whole family and everything he has goes across a river. He's the only one left behind, so he's totally alone. And then this strange man comes and wrestles with him. And traditionally, that's either an angel of God or God himself. Those two are kind of interchangeable in the Old Testament. Wrestles with him until daybreak. And when the angel finds out that he can't defeat Jacob, he injures his hip. He wrenches his hip, so it's dislocated. But Jacob still won't let go. He won't let go, even though he's been injured. And so that's when the angel blesses him, which is just absolutely beautiful to me.
Yeah, no, that's a really great story. So let me I'm gonna try and speak it out because I want to understand it better and as well. So so Jacob goes and he finally goes to the place which would be darkest for him, right? His greatest fear is his brother. He knows his brother is a huge danger, but he also feels like he has a great responsibility to go back towards him, right? So he has these feelings and he knows what he has to do, even though he's really scared to do it. Okay, so then he goes and approaches Esau and he does it. Doesn't he do it in like a really interesting way? He's like, okay, well, here's a group of sheep, and here's a group of goats, and here's a group of right, and so he sort of sends out a streamline of the things that he's going to give back to Esau, and he says, look, do it real, so that would be him approaching his fears slowly and with purpose, and so because each group is instructed to tell Esau, look, this is stuff for you. This is from Jacob, and there's more coming, and he's back there.
Yeah, so he's actually doing something. He's actually trying already, even though he hasn't met him, to make amends. But he doesn't, because he doesn't hear back from them that Jacob's accepted. That Esau's accepted them or not. So he still doesn't know. He could have just taken, Esau could have just taken them and still been like, oh, I'm going to kill him anyway. But yeah, he's doing something. So for me, it's like he's doing something, but he doesn't know whether it will work or not. And I think that's the key for this, because like Peterson often emphasizes, you can do all the right things and you can still be destroyed. You can still be destroyed by life.
Yeah, because, and we get that story really early with Cain and Abel, right? Making the improper. You can sacrifice away and if it's wrong, then God will punish you anyways.
Well, yeah. Or I thought you were referring to Abel, because Abel does do the right things. He ends up getting murdered by his brother.
Right. Yeah. So, the resentment and the malevolence of the world takes him over. Right. Yeah.
That's right.
All those things combined.
So there's real danger and there's real uncertainty. Even though now Jacob's acting in the correct way, he could still be destroyed by this encounter. So there's real fear, and that's what makes him truly heroic.
Right. And so he knows he's going into a place of that could completely end him, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But
okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's he's facing it heroically is all I was going to say. Yeah.
And okay, so then he sends out all of his flocks to Esau, and then doesn't he like that which is dearest to him he sends. So like I guess he's got a wife and kids and he sends them across into Jordan to keep them safe, and then he wrestles with God alone as Esau is approaching, and so he's having to overcome the fear and not run away from Esau as he comes, and he stays right there, and God's like, are you sure? Are you sure? And
Yeah.
that's God like really messing with him. And he goes, and so the wrestling would be Jacob going, yes, I know I must do this. No, I can't run away from this. I don't care how bad I get injured. So quit wrestling with me, because you're gonna have to kill me, God, or because I've got to do this. Something like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it's interesting, because Jacob doesn't obviously defeat the angel, but Jacob merely refuses to be defeated by the angel. All Jacob has to do is hold him until daybreak.
Right.
And then the angel's begging him to let him go. And that's exactly what he has to do, because Esau meets him very shortly after daybreak. So he just has to stay true. He has to be sincere to his sense of responsibility and to what he knows is right, even though it could destroy him. And that's like a terrible, terrible thing in this case, because not only might he die, his whole family might die. So, you know, it's unbelievably dark for him. And he's alone, because that struggle takes place in the depths of his own soul. He can't rely on anyone to help him. Right. It's his choice. So he's totally alone in that, and he's in the dark in that. And yeah, when I really looked into that, and because I wrote a article about it, maybe we can link to that or something. But when I really looked into that to write that, I was like, this story is so profoundly deep and beautiful. I was a little bit disappointed, actually, that Peterson didn't dwell on. He covered it in
that was like the very last lecture that he did of the 12 of the biblical series, right? And then I didn't remember getting a whole lot. I mean, I always get a lot out of his lectures, but I don't remember getting a whole lot of biblical deconstruction out of that last one, I think.
Yeah, he covered it briefly, but yeah, he was all Asen's like structure of thought just contained within that little story, you know. Jacob being the hero, you know, the unknown, the darkness, you know, going through that heroically, coming out the other side with the injury as well. So his hip is dislocated, and he limps away from that. And it doesn't ever say that his hip gets, you know, healed. He presumably lives the rest of his life somewhat disabled. Yeah. He's actually disabled from that. And that, again, is very profound, too, because it's like, this isn't all sweetness and honey. He gets seriously injured by his encounter with the unknown, and it's also, perhaps it's a bit of punishment, too, you know, because he did ruthlessly deceive his brother. So he has to live with that. Even though he's repented, even though he's turned back, he still gets injured, and he has to live with that. And so I like it because it's more realistic. It's not saying that, you know, it's a bit like the story of Job. You know, at the end of the story of Job, which some people actually think was added to it later, Job gets everything back. He obviously didn't get his original family back, but he gets a new family, so it's okay. Right. And it's like, oh, Job was, you know, he gets everything back. It's okay because he proved himself and stuff. But in this story, Jacob gets a lot. He gets to be Israel. That's pretty cool. But he's partially disabled, perhaps, for the rest of his life. So I think the point of that is that you can be seriously injured by the wrestling that you go through, by your encounters with the unknown, with chaos. That's part of life. You have to accept that. You have to accept that. And that's a really Petersonian idea for me, because Peterson's so kind of depressive and dark sometimes, you know.
Yes.
Like,
well, I mean,
suffering.
Yeah. Well, didn't he start the whole journey because he was having all those apocalyptic nightmares of and so, well, what do you do with all that? Exactly. And why haven't we blown ourselves up yet? Yeah.
Peterson's thing is life is suffering. Accept it and embrace it and find the meaning that would justify it, which I find quite, well, extremely beautiful and compelling, because I don't know if he's consciously done that, but the first kind of key point of Buddhism is that life is suffering as well. But they go a different direction. And they say, because life is suffering, we have to escape it, right? And so I feel like Peterson's a bit of an...
Is that how they actually phrase it? Life is suffering, so we must escape it? Or is escape the right word?
Well, nirvana, which you've probably heard, it's not like heaven. It means extinction. It means like a candle to be snuffed out. You actually want to separate yourself from life as we know it, because life as we know it is suffering. So they call them the Four Noble Truths. The first is life is suffering. I believe the second is that suffering is caused by craving or attachment. The third is that there's a way out of suffering, I think. And then the fourth is sort of, this is how you go about it, which is sort of the Buddhist path. All the, meditate and act righteously and don't be attached to things and all those kind of things. But yeah, they aim for the escape of life, because life is suffering. And it's like, I've got a point about the first part, but the rest of it,
the second part sounds really nihilistic, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
like, yeah, almost the opposite of finding purpose and meaning, and instead of picking up your cross and carrying it up the hill and doing as many good works as you can until you die with your cross on your back or nailed to it, then then you just wink out, and you do your best to make the winking out as peaceful as possible.
That's it. Yes, you're striving for that, because Buddhists believe in rebirth. They believe that if you do any violence, that will actually come back as bad karma. So you can't kill yourself, because you won't escape. You'll just be more firmly tied to the wheel of rebirth. So what you do is you extinguish your desires. You extinguish desire, and with that goes suffering. Because you don't want anything, you can't be harmed. You can't be hurt by anything. And that's probably true, but it's like, is that what we want out of life? I feel Christianity
incomplete to me. Yeah.
I think I feel like the Western religions, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, they have a much more healthier view, because they accept creation as being fundamentally good. When God makes the world, he says over and over again, he saw that it was good. And it's like, and because of that, you're not trying to escape the world, you're not trying to escape creation, but you are trying to improve it, you are trying to mitigate the evil and suffering within it, but all the time you're not trying to escape. And then the image of the future, the image of the ideal afterlife in physical, people forget this. They think it's heaven is some abstract thing that your soul goes to, but it's the resurrection of the dead. And that's, even if you don't believe that literally, symbolically what it's saying is that the body is good, right? Physical existence is good. That's why there's a fall, right? There's a fall from the perfect creation. And again, that is just mythical as far as we know. Like, there was no perfect time in human history. But what that symbolizes is that in its essence, creation is good. Something else comes in and makes it bad. And we have to deal with that, and we have to somehow help it to get back to being good again, or perfecting it again. To find some kind of well, we're echoing again. Oh, let me just rearrange this again. I haven't changed them, so I don't know what to. Yeah, I feel like I shouldn't have praised Google Hangouts before, because we've had some issues here.
Yeah, sure enough.
Are we good now, or are we still echoing?
I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
So I like all of that, and I always like how our conversations go, and they go like this with other people that I have, when we're really doing a good job of chasing each other down the rabbit hole, I suppose. Yeah. The one last thing I would want to say about Jacob is, it's nice that it's sort of it's another one of those redeeming stories, right? So you can, I feel like it's a story of, look, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to figure out what the right thing to do is, and you may have come from a pretty shifty background, you can still be accepted by God and do lots of good works in the world by letting all that go and beginning to make amends for it, and then acting in the right way.
Absolutely. And I think beyond the acceptance of God, it also shows, that people can forgive each other. It's a beautiful scene when Esau actually accepts him and actually says, no, look, I've forgotten about it. Like, I don't care anymore. You're my brother. It's like such a powerful scene. And it's like Esau didn't have to do that. Esau had good reason to be angry with him. But he chose to give up that resentment, which is itself a really powerful thing, So
yeah, absolutely. That's great. So, well, that's interesting too about that the Buddhist view. I was really surprised that it just seems to be an escape back to wherever we came from, almost in a way, the way you stated it. So
Yeah, I see it as an escape. But I think that in effect, like Buddhism has many different varieties, like Christianity does. And
sure.
so I think that over time, it's become kind of humanized in many areas. So yeah, because it's originally a non-theistic religion. It doesn't have any god of any kind. So
Right.
that's another distinctive feature. But over time, people have added gods in, and they've also added sort of like Christ-like God, savior figures. And so I
Didn't
find that pretty interesting too. Yeah.
Oh, so Christ-like figures have been entered into Buddhism.
Yeah.
Would you mind
Yeah, so
talking about
yeah,
that
yeah,
for
absolutely. So originally the idea, and this still continues in sort of like Southern Asia, so Sri Lanka and Thailand and so forth, that kind of Buddhism, it's basically like you become a monk, you meditate, hopefully in this lifetime you get enlightened, and as soon as you have the opportunity to get enlightened, you're out of here, you're gone,
a
and that's good. You don't owe it to anyone else to sort of stick around. But in the northern areas, so Tibet and sort of China, Japan, the idea developed of what's called a bodhisattva. So this is different from a Buddha. A Buddha gets enlightened. A bodhisattva perfects themselves to the point where they could choose to be enlightened any moment. They could cross that threshold,
but don't.
but they stay in the world. Do accept enlightenment. Individual in existence has also been enlightened, and so that's the self-sacrificial element. So it's a sort of Christ-like, savior-like figure. They choose to continue endless cycles of rebirth and suffering so that they can save other people. And it's like that's just been organically introduced into that religion, I think, because it's an archetypal image. It's like we crave it, just like we
Right.
crave God, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Something redeeming, something that
exactly.
the Redeemer that we can look up to and believe in order to act well in the world and not just suffer all the way through until we die, right?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, I think we want a God that's relatable, perhaps. We want a God that will take our place, which is sort of the image of Christ. God comes down and takes our place. But yeah, but yeah, I just out of curiosity, have you looked into sort of many other religions, or has it been mainly Christianity that you've studied?
Well, mainly Christianity. My understanding of the other religions is pretty surface,
Mm,
and not very deep.
mm,
And well, my plan is to go real deep into Christianity first because,
mm,
well, after all, I was born into this, I think
mm. Yeah,
for a reason, and
yeah.
so why not go with that first? Then as I'm sure as I crave understanding, then I may explore the other ones. But I think that so many of them seem to be going towards one bright path, and there's a
Mm,
couple of different roads to get there, and especially since you just told me about uh, introducing a sacrificial archetype
mm,
into Buddhism, then maybe there's something about the other religions that isn't quite developed fully.
mm.
I don't know, but I don't want to miss out on anything and assume that I know it all. But God's only going to give me so much time on the earth, so yeah. So I
Absolutely.
guess the
Yeah.
plan would be Christianity first, and then probably dive into a whole bunch of readings on symbology and history,
Yeah.
and as I'm doing that, I would probably do some light study on on other religions to understand them, especially reading the texts themselves
Mm,
for
mm,
uh, personal understanding, because I think
mm.
I do get a lot of that by trying to. Here's a weird thing. So I'm going to tangent us a little bit since we're talking
Cool.
about that.
Yeah.
Since I've started to meditate
Yeah.
more and to really try to be more mindful of trying to empty my mind and then see what comes of it, and to do it
Mhm.
in a really I like to do it in a dark environment,
Mm,
and it's really neat when I can do it with my eyes open, then because it feels, well, maybe it's something like that sensory deprivation chamber
mm,
kind of experience. I've
mm,
never done that, but well, at any rate, so I meditated, and a few things popped into my mind. One, Richard Dreyfuss. I was like, what? Okay, why? Where did that come from? And part of it was, I think, it wasn't just Richard Dreyfuss. It was Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of a Third Kind. Have you seen the movie?
I haven't. No.
Okay, so the Steven Spielberg movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, has Richard Dreyfuss playing a character who sees UFOs and knows they're real, and they like the actual things fly over him, and he sees all kinds of crazy stuff. Very few people get to see the same vision that he does, and it affects him profoundly. And he doesn't just go around going, "Hey, there's UFOs." He becomes obsessive about a particular idea. And the idea that he becomes obsessive with is he sees this image in his mind, and the image is and the thing that he keeps telling himself is, this is important. And he'll do some drawings or he'll do some sculpture. This means something. And his wife and his kids are looking at him like, he's gone. He lost his mind, and he's completely out there. But he knows he has to pursue it. And so the underlying story of Close Encounters of the Third Kind is not just the meeting with the aliens at the end, which is what ends up happening, but what Richard Dreyfuss's character has to sacrifice in order to gain access to the meeting with something that seemed impossible, and so he becomes that kind of that archetypal character that's stubborn enough to not listen to the majority around him and to follow his own path regardless, and then being rewarded for it, even though everybody thinks he's absolutely insane. And then that also made me think of another story which popped into my mind immediately afterwards, which was A Beautiful Mind, which is the story of John Nash and his ability to do pattern recognition, that basically, because he had such an amazing mind for observing and then just seeing, and then it meant something to him. And so he's kind of having that whole, this means something, but in his case, whereas Dreyfuss was, well, maybe I won't draw the comparison yet. But so Nash goes forward and he does have psychotic breakdowns, and he he sees projections of his roommate friend who's completely false, and all this, but his mind is of such quality that he comes up with the Nash equilibrium and many other great works, and he eventually receives the Nobel Prize for that. But he has to go through all this pain that his ability puts on him, because he can't see the visions of the mathematical proofs unless he's also seeing the visions of all the fake people that he's basically projected out, because that's the way his mind works. So I'm not quite sure why I got those visions, but it led me to exploring those two, revisiting those two movies again, and I think a bit of it is because as you start to explore things that you don't really have a whole lot of empirical evidence for, you start to doubt yourself quite a bit. And so what my unconscious was trying to show me was that, no, you don't have to really be scared of this being really weird and different, and people looking at you a little bit sideways, because it's new, it's strange, and that's what people are built to do. But you shouldn't feel that your mind is dissolving either, because you're exploring a lot of things that most people are a path that most people are unwilling to go down, because it's kind of scary. You have to be very sure of it's the combination. How does Peterson put it? If you want to be that person that comes up with a really great, innovative new idea, you must be so sure of it that you'll defend it against the masses and the crowds who will try to tear you down and make you be seen as someone who's on the fringe, who shouldn't be listened to. And it's that whole barrel of crabs things, where the one crab who gets the great idea of actually climbing out of the barrel. He gets pulled down by all the other crabs and says, "No, you can't be right, because you need to be down here with the barrel with the rest of us so that we can be comfortable in our spot. Because if you ascend, then that means we have some work to do, or we have to ignore you."
Yeah, I think that, and this is true to my experience as well, but when you actually start to go deep into the unconscious, or so for instance, when you start to look deeply at symbolism even, because that's the same movement, or when you're going through some sort of life transformation, or when you're just deeply introspecting, all those things sort of like churn up the unconscious, and I think you start to see, I mean, you do start to see synchronicities everywhere, and you do start to see everything fitting together and sort of seemingly guiding you forward. And I think that you can sort of work with that, and a lot of that is pretty legitimate. But it is the unconscious, like it is the realm of chaos, and I think that it can also taken to an extreme, if your ego dissolves too fast or too much, then yeah, you've got psychosis, you've got madness,
Right.
and that happens to plenty of people. I've known at least a couple of them. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's always necessary to be cautious. I mean, for me, what works best is just to have a kind of humor about it and a kind of distance from anything that I'm sort of perceiving, or any views that I might hold, or any directions that I feel like I'm called to go in, just to sort of say, yeah, that's interesting, and maybe I will do that, and maybe this is right, but could also be wrong. It could also just be, my mind arranging things in a specific way. So long as you've got that humor and that kind of sense of distance, I think you're pretty okay. But yeah, I mean, because if you got the sense of the beautiful mind as well, I feel like that's a bit more of ambiguous one. Would you want to be that guy? Like for all his brilliance,
Yeah, that's a
I don't
painful
think I
existence.
would. Yeah, I don't think I would.
I don't think I'd want to go that far either. Well, Nash never. It would have been interesting if Nash had pursued the healing of himself. Well, and I think he did. I'll probably read his it's not an autobiography, but the book that the film is made off of, to see if I can get any more detail out of it. But at a point in the movie, at least, Nash is confronted with, well, a choice, and the choice is go back to shock therapy and taking antipsychotics and basically being nothing.
Yeah.
Because he gets to the point where he can't sleep with his wife. He's useless around the house. He just kind of mopes around and is dark and is in existence. And so he makes the conscious choice to take himself off the medicine. And then then his psychosis starts to grab him again, and he wrestles and fights with it. And then at the end of the movie, his projections are still there, but they're kind of off in the background. And so now he's been able to harness the good features of his mind without the negative aspects possessing him and taking him over, because he was doing all kinds of things that were just complete waste of time, linking up patterns between magazines and right, all that, and pretending that he was chasing, doing something for the greater part. I think he had a great. This is okay. Yeah, now that I'm saying it, this is what the similarity was to me. I think most people, and I include myself in this particularly, have a great need to feel at least somewhat important.
Yeah.
And Nash had a great desire to be very important, because he knew he was very intellectual and very intelligent, and so when he wasn't receiving his recognition at the speed that he felt like he should, he invented a scenario where he would be doing the greatest good in his own mind, and would eventually be recognized for it in his own mind. And then the lesson, I think, at the end, and so that's sort of particular for me too, because I want to feel important, but I don't want to do it in a way that would be harmful or self-destructive or perpetuate some sort of darkness instead of light through the world, because here I am broadcasting on YouTube. I don't want to do anything that would spread tendrils of destruction, through society or something like that. Right?
Yeah.
And well, at the end of the movie, Nash attributes all of his work to, because he eventually receives the Nobel Prize, so his reward comes much later than what he had intended. So there's that whole message of working in God's time and being patient and not rushing forward, and being confident that if you do the right things, then the reward will come. And he attributes love to the ability to know whether he was doing right or wrong at the point. And I just rewatched the movie this afternoon, so I'm not really sure what to do with all that, but that feels right. If you are acting out of a desire to first improve yourself, and you make yourself as the whole Peterson thing, if you make yourself as good as possible, then you straighten your home as good as possible, then you start to reach out into your community and do that, and then you can kind of observe the kinds of reactions that you're getting from the changes that you're making, and that feedback gives you further direction. So I think what after that whole tangent there, that my subconscious was trying to let me see, because I think there was a part of me that was worried that I was not really going off the deep end, but maybe making connections that I didn't need, or was losing confidence, and those two movies kind of made me go, well, no, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not spreading anything weird, and I'm exploring a very new path. And of course, it feels very weird because I'm approaching a very unexplored territory, very much so.
Yeah, totally. Like what you say about Nash, sort of his sense of wanting to be like acknowledged as being very important. I mean, I think that's sort of universal. Everyone has that, and it's because it's because we've got that dominance hierarchy sort of sensor built into us, or desire or drive built into us. So we're always going to be playing that dominance hierarchy game, and so it's like, we can't really suppress that. We can't suppress the desire or the drive, but we can be aware of that. And if we're aware of that, then we can monitor little subtle ways that we're doing things like that. And so you want to be like, I think sometimes Peterson says, here's an image of, there's pyramids. You want to be on the top of each pyramid, like different fields, different things you might be able to achieve, top of the dominance hierarchy at. But what you really want to be is you want to be sort of like the bird that soars over all the pyramids and sees them. So you want to be awareness, right? So you want to identify as awareness. So that's that distance I'm talking about. You want to sort of just be like, my whole worldview could be totally wrong. And obviously you can't fully believe that because you couldn't live like that. But I think you do want to do that to some degree. Like because I'm fascinated by all religions. That's my thing. So I never really had a big thing with like materialism. I was never like a hardcore materialist or atheist. And I just, I don't have that issue, I guess. But my issue from like Orthodox Christians' perspectives would be that I see so much beauty and value in other religions. And I can also see that how if you put yourself in a worldview, you really live into it, you really do see the whole world in that particular way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you can actually sort of change that to a degree. Like some people do play around with this. Like, they'll consciously enter one kind of worldview for a while, and then they'll consciously enter a different one. And what they'll notice is that everything seems to change, like the way they see things, what they see, how they see it, it all changes. And I think that when you get a sense of that, you have to be quite, you do have to have that distance of being like, what I'm seeing from my current perspective could just be conditioned by all these other factors. Like it might not be the truth, even though it feels like it. So yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of where I stand. And I feel like it kind of agrees with Peterson. Like he's not jumping into Christianity. He's not, getting baptized or whatever. He's not, joining a church. And I guess that's kind of where I stand as well. Like if I felt personally called, if I felt like I don't know. There are situations where I would just jump in, I think, but for now, I don't think it's authentic to do that because I don't know. I don't want to lock myself in one worldview, you know?
All right. Yeah.
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 And I think that's oh, do your speaker thing.
Oh, sorry. Is it?
Get a like.
Are you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but just it was echoing. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons why my shift happened so quickly was because I was like had explored sort of, well, my life led me through, well, I don't believe in God at all, and that was pretty much me from teenager years on, and I called myself agnostic for most of my life, and then atheistic as in maybe the past 4 years or so, and then finally as the Peterson phenomenon started to root up, then I started to follow along that. Then I let go of the militant tag, and then I let go of the atheist tag, and then I began to believe, and and it happened very, very quickly. And I think it happened as quickly as it did because of a lot of the things that we were themes that we were talking about, which in Exodus and in Genesis is you hit that point of pain where you finally have to wrestle with God, and you're going to, based on your experiences of the past, you're going to wrestle with God in a skillful way, in a quick way, in a way that flips your worldview, or adjusts the filter of how you see the world, in a very dramatic way. That was true for me anyways, because the old way was I go to work so that I can have as much fun when I'm not at work. And now the way is I will do as much work as I can, so long as it is this kind of deep and meaningful work that I'm doing now as I'm studying and exploring the world, and trying to pull as many pieces of it together, put them in my mind, and then be able to create something new and valuable for everyone else. And that has purpose and meaning, and gives me drive. And because of that, and now I want to do that as much as possible. I want to do it for as long as possible. So that gives me reason not to. In fact, I want it so much that I want it more than I want pizza, hamburgers, beer, wine, or anything else, right? And because it feels so fantastic to have the golden path laid out in front of me, so to say.
Yes.
And you want to walk it as long as you can, and the amount of borderline euphoria, I would even say, because I mean, because last night at the end of Sunday, I've never felt so happy, and I'm happy because this is my reward for the work that I've done, and I enjoyed all the work that I did. But now God's like blessing me, so to speak, I guess. Have a couple of glasses of wine, relax, think, and be so grateful about where you are. And then that carried, and the idea that popped into my head at that point was, what if I could feel like this all the time? And how fantastic would that be? Not just when I have those the two glasses of wine at the end of the week or something like that, but could I carry that feeling forward? And I did. And I carried it forward through, well, I'm still feeling some of it, but definitely through at least lunchtime today, when I came into an actual conflict, and then that kind of shook me back into reality, and so to speak. But then that peace kind of came back naturally on its own. So I'm beginning to experience things that I thought were only possible by slowly killing yourself by putting too many reward systems like alcohol and or eating for pleasure and things in my body.
It's like when you're just seeking pleasure or happiness, you don't actually end up with, or you don't end up with meaning, and so you don't end up with actual happiness at all. You don't end up with true joy. But when you're seeking meaning and you don't really care that much about happiness, you get happiness too. So
yeah.
yeah. But even if you don't, like even if you're actually suffering, if you have meaning, you can bear that. And I think that's one of Peterson's central messages. There's a verse that Jesus quotes to Satan in when he's being tempted in the desert, because Satan tells him to turn, because Jesus is fasting for 40 days, and Satan says, turn these stones into bread.
Turn the stones to bread, right? Yeah.
And he says, man, and he quotes the Old Testament, man cannot live by bread alone. And I think Peterson quotes this in one of the biblical lectures, and he says, no, man cannot live by bread alone. He lives on meaning. He lives on meaning. And actually, Jesus goes on to quote, man lives on every word that comes from God, or something like that. Every word that comes from the mouth of God. So that sounds a bit like meaning, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, meaning is what we're made for. Meaning is what we're made for. And when we're on that track, we feel the effects of that. Yeah, yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very real. And Jesus was telling the truth. That heals. I mean, I feel fantastic. Just way better than I'm like 30 pounds lighter. I have tons of energy. I can't wait to do more. You know, there's a lot of things in my life that are very chaotic, and I'm a little bit fearful to approach them, but I'm far more excited to approach them now than fearful. And I look forward to exploring the things that I don't know and don't understand or can't quite see past yet. Right. And so all of that is true. And I like that you brought up the three temptations of Christ in the desert, because I thought, as I've done this, I feel like I've gained a lot of ability. And so that's maybe you could, and I've thought about it in this way as well. So that's kind of like God trusting you with the tools that he gave you, right? And then Satan's going to come along and try to tempt you again. And he's going to say, look, you've awoken this huge potential within yourself to be able to craft the world. You could have any of the pleasures that you want. All of this can be yours if you will just bow down to me.
Yeah.
And of course, Jesus refuses. And so that's the ultimate choice. At the end, you take this path of walking towards being as Christ-like as possible, and then Satan's going to be there to try to make you an avatar for the dark.
As you were saying that, I was thinking of, like, I think this applies to a lot of people, but I was thinking of Julius Caesar. I don't know if you know much Roman history, but he was an absolutely brilliant person. Like, he was clearly an extremely gifted, extremely self-disciplined person, but he kind of did that. He kind of took the temptation of Satan of the kingdoms of the world. He did that. He became, dictator for life, when he could have used his vast gifts for the good of the republic. But he decided he wanted power, of course, and then he got, murdered. But yeah, like, that's absolutely right. I think it's funny because he probably did train himself in virtue. That's probably partly why he was so gifted. Probably partly it was natural sort of, gifts, but partly it was probably because he did the self-discipline necessary. And so it's like, when you do that, you do get stronger. And with that strength, you can use that for the meaning, furthering that, or you can just turn back. You've got the strength, you've got that development, and you can just use it for the old stuff again. You can use that for power and pleasure and so forth. And yeah, that's a good point about the temptation. We're jumping all over the Bible now, aren't we?
But I wanted to let me interrupt you real quick, because I think it's fantastic, because there's got to be a reason for that, right? Because we do that. What do we do when we get on the internet? We get 50 hyperlinks, and then we've got a billion windows and tabs open all over the place. And it's because we chase those logical holes of things that we're down the rabbit hole for things that we're interested in, and we do that on the internet. And then the Bible is kind of like, well, the first hyperlink text document, right?
Text, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm gonna have to go. Like,
that's cool. This has been a really great talk. Thank you, Gabriel, for your time this evening, and I really enjoyed it. We can, if you'd like to do it again, I'm always looking for it.
It's been really interesting, really stimulating. Lots of insights coming in. So yeah, I would love to do it again.
Okay.
And,
Well, maybe we'll tackle a little bit more of the Exodus story next time you and I talk, and then see what other rabbit holes and wormholes we end up slipping through. Yeah, okay.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Then we'll chat soon. Thank you, everybody else, for watching. And I'll post this up. And please continue the discussion down below. Oh, Gabe, send me your links and things for anything that you think is appropriate for this, and I'll put them in the chat below.
Awesome. All right. Goodbye for now.
All right. Good night. Good night, everybody.